So my name is Charles and I'm here in Vietnam since 6 months. Well, I live here maybe almost 8 months if I count everything. And I was always intrigued by learning Vietnamese, and I really want to improve my skills of Vietnamese. So today we're gonna review together a video by Sky Tran, Learn Vietnamese 10 times faster, secrets from Vietnamese teacher. It looked very interesting, and if you click on that video, it's probably that you have the same goal as me, which is learning Vietnamese. So we can go through this video together. So I really love this creator. The name is Sky Tran, and she do a lot of sidewalk interview and stuff like that you can. We have really similar contents. I mean, like, for example, I do sidewalk interview here on few video, here asking foreigner, here in the sidewalk interview, here sidewalk interview. We have kind of same content, so that is really, really interesting to go through her channel. Please visit her channel, it's very good content. And today we are concerned about this video, Learn Vietnamese. So I take some thing to take note. Okay, let's go.
What advice would you give to Vietnamese language learners who are struggling to learn Vietnamese tones? What is the best way to practice Vietnamese outside of the classroom?
I recommend people go to places where people don't really speak good English.
Yeah, that's very, very good advice. Actually, it happened to me today. So today I was with my Bangay Yadin, so my girlfriend family, and we've been to them house, and no one speak English except of Hannah. So I have to speak Vietnamese anyway, and asking every time, what is this word, I don't know, for example, like fishing, I didn't know how to say fishing, so fishing thing with la ye, DBN. Okay, DBN is like the same word of going on the beach and stuff. Yeah, actually I hang out with people who don't speak English is very useful, but there's this limit also of you need to get the translation at least,
I don't recommend people go to the actual class to learn Vietnamese because the language they teach.
The what?
I don't recommend people go to the actual class to learn Vietnamese because the language they teach.
Oh, why?
Teach you at the school is totally different from the language we use on the street. People.
Oh, that's actually, man. Even me at the beginning of the video, I was like saying that looking for courses here in Da Nang, but everything is closed, so I just keep, learning by self-teaching on YouTube or whatever. Wow, that's crazy, and that's true. Also, I remember now when I use some word I learned on on public teaching free lesson as YouTube. They always told me I'm too formal. I'm way too formal. Like, for example, I believe vui long. They never say vui long. It's like the translation of please. I used a lot. I used to use a lot vui long, but they never used that. And yeah.
Don't really say like that. If you want to speak like a native, you have to learn from the local people, the way they speak.
Since I talk.
Yeah, for example, here in Da Nang, they say rang to say bye, and it's in the other region they don't use this word, so I think that's really good advice.
What is the hardest part about learning Vietnamese?
I'm gonna say with pronunciation. I think grammar is very easy, but pronunciation is very complicated, especially the intonation. Dấu sắc phải nặng, or some sound is a lot of foreigners struggle with, like ng, like especially Westerner. For Asian,
something I really struggle with is the way they say the alphabet. When you learn a new word, they say, like, I don't know, I don't get it. Like mom, they say M-O-M sak mum or something like that. I don't get it at all.
Easy, but for Westerner, sometimes it's very difficult for them to pronounce the word ng in Vietnamese or something.
Yeah, and when I arrive in Vietnam, I say dinu. To say go to sleep, dinu. En fait, yeah, there is a G, right? It's ng. It's the ngo. Ngo is sleep. And at the beginning, I just say nu, so dinu, but they don't understand. I say dingo, and then they understand, like dingo. It's not dino, it's dingo. This is a strong singularity in Vietnamese language, like ng, ngu.
Have like th or got a t, the Vietnamese t. People cannot say bình tăng in case of like bình tan. That's very confusing.
I have trouble trying to pronounce Nguyen. It's hard for me to say that.
But you Vietnamese like have
Nguyen.
Vietnamese, right?
I'm overseas Vietnamese. I was born in the US,
Yeah.
but saying Nguyen, I always say it wrong.
Nguyen.
The NG is a very difficult sound for foreigner to pronounce that. And even the intonation, sometimes how to pronounce the tone, like up, down, kind of thing, very complicated.
Pronunciation is always the most challenging thing a foreigner have to face when they study Vietnamese. When my students, they study Vietnamese and they practice what they learned in the class, but the Vietnamese people, they respond in English. Sometimes my students discouraged when study Vietnamese because like they don't have environment to practice.
Why do you think it's really difficult for foreigners to learn the pronunciations in Vietnamese?
Pronunciation between English and Vietnamese is different. I think for like Korean learners or Chinese learners, it's easier for them. But if you are American or the people from the speaking English countries, it is harder for you guys. My Chinese students or my Korean students, when they study Vietnamese, the time for them to complete pronunciation is usually shorter.
Yeah, sure, it's shorter. They have tones in their own language, so they already understand the system, right?
Than the English speaking people.
Because in China and Korea, they have tones, right? So it's easy for them?
They have the tones. Vietnamese, we have many borrowed words from Chinese. So when it comes to the vocabularies, it's easier for them to memorize, just to study and to...
They have many borrowed words from Chinese and from French as well. They say like 95% of the words come from China and 5%, about 5% of the words come from French. It's so I'm French, and that was so funny to come here and see this familiarity. You know, even the little plate front of the house is exactly the same as in France, and the road sign and stuff is exactly the same as France. It's so funny to see. And yeah, auto is auto in France. You know, there is a tablier, like tablier. There is so many words like that. Chocolat, chocolat. And yeah, there's many. That's so funny.
To pronounce.
What's the most common challenge foreigners face when learning Vietnamese?
I think listening. The thing is,
Yeah, that's definitely the most challenge. Like pronunciation is one thing, but listening is hectic.
foreigner go to the proper class, like the actual class. They will teach you very proper Vietnamese. But on the street, people don't use the language like that. They speak broken Vietnamese. Sometimes they use a lot of slangs. It's very difficult for the foreigner to understand. And also the accent, especially in Saigon, we have people from different provinces. And every province in Vietnam, they have different accent. So sometimes you learn with each teacher who have northern accent, and you meet another person from the south or from the middle of Vietnam.
That's the best struggle also. I mean, even the local people, there are hard times to understand the people who come from the north, for example, here in Da Nang.
The middle of Vietnam is like very complicated.
I can't understand
the
the accent.
Me, as the native speaker, sometimes I cannot understand a Vietnamese from the central.
It sounds like another language to me.
It gives you lots of different words, and the pronunciation or the way they pronounce is very heavy.
The pronunciation, the vocabulary, and the environment, especially with the people who don't live in Vietnam, the time they spend with Vietnamese or they get exposure to Vietnamese is not a lot. They don't have lots of times to practice. It discouraging them.
For me, it makes sense to learn Vietnamese if you stay at least 6 months. And I really don't get it, the people who they stay 10 years and they speak just like me, you know, or even less vocabulary.
So it's better to be more immersed in the Vietnamese environment, culture, friends, family?
Yeah, I think so, especially if you
But we are all different. Some people are very busy, some people have family, some people have their own struggle. I completely understand.
have a good motivation. Actually, 1 week ago, I had a student who decided to give up studying Vietnamese, and when I asked her, because she broke up with her boyfriend who is Vietnamese. At first, she studied Vietnamese because of her boyfriend, and that I could see the improvement. She improved quickly. Since she broke up with her boyfriend, she had no motivation. She didn't want to listen or speak any Vietnamese.
So if each girl is abroad, it makes a lot of sense. But if she lived in Vietnam, actually, you have to learn.
Motivation is really important thing when study a language.
What advice?
It's more than motivation, because with motivation, you have only this spike of you want to learn during 3 weeks. But you know, when you just arrive in a new country, you have these loving phases. But then after a few months, after 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, you're just used to live here. So you love and you like less and less and less the country. So you don't have this this motivation to learn. So learning a language is more we say in French volonté. La volonté is like it's like discipline, but I want to say another word in English. I don't get it, but it's more than motivation. I mean, obviously it's more than motivation to learn a language because it's a long-term goal.
Would you give
I think volonté is the willpower or something. Will wanting, or I'm sorry about that.
to Vietnamese language learners who are struggling to learn Vietnamese tones?
The first thing they need to do is they have to select the accent they want to learn first. Note
Yeah. So yeah.
or sound or whatever. And they're gonna stick with that and find a teacher who can teach them that the accent. Because if they keep meeting and learning with different teachers who have different accents, it's gonna be...
At the beginning, I didn't know which one I want to learn because on internet, I believe there is more resources to learn the northern accent. But no, it makes no sense. You have to learn the dialects. You have to learn the dialect where you're gonna live, right? So if you're in the south, the southern. If you're in Da Nang, like the mid. The central accent, as they say, and then if you live in the north, like Sapa or whatever, you have to learn the northern accent.
Very confusing for them. So I think the first thing they're gonna stick with the accent. If they want...
Don't pick the one who sounds the most beautiful, Just take the most useful.
to learn Southern or Northern, and that's it. Very important. When you actually can understand Southern accent well, I think understanding Northern is gonna be easier. But when you just started learning, you shouldn't mess up.
You should commit to one style.
And also, they have to understand the logic and the rule of the tune. When how you pronounce dấu sắc, how do you pronounce dấu hỏi, how do you make dấu nặng, this kind of thing like that. They have to understand the rule.
Pronunciation is hard, but it's not really that hard if you are consistent with studying. I think you can master the pronunciation. I have some students, they study really consistently. They can pronounce a word easier. Vietnamese is very logical language, and especially with many words. For example, when we say AC, we say something about the wardrobe with the code, which is really logical language. So it's easy to...
Yeah, that's come from the Chinese side, right? Chinese to say I don't know, to say family is like the run is like the people and the house, and it's family. This is the radical, they call it the radical. So this is very logical, I like it.
To remember the word, but first I think we need to focus on pronunciation first, because after mastering pronunciation, you can pronounce every single word. Many learners, normally they skip this stage when they have to focus on pronunciation. They study a bunch of words, and then one day they found out that, the Vietnamese people, they don't understand me. They have to get back to the pronunciation because they have a bunch of grammars, a bunch of words, but Vietnamese don't get what they mean. They are upset with it.
Because they can't understand their pronunciation. Understandable. How different is Northern Vietnamese from Southern Vietnamese when it comes to learning?
There's a lot of differences. First, the pronunciation. In the South, we say yi, mean what? But in the North, they say zi. So in Saigon, we say ba, they say bo. I think it's very similar to British English and American English. There's a lot. And also, the
it's even more than that.
culture is different too. How people use the words.
The difference is from the vocabulary and the pronunciation. Many students, they ask me which accent should they learn. If you have many Vietnamese friends who are from the South, just study Southern Vietnamese. But if you work in the North, it's better to study Northern Vietnamese. My students usually ask me that, so if I study Southern Vietnamese, I cannot understand Northern Vietnamese. I think it's just the first stage of learning Vietnamese, because when we learn English, at first we might learn American English or British English, but then gradually it takes time to understand many accents like Indian English, Australian English.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Australia during a year, and I think it's less struggle with English. I mean, the contrast is less, is less hard. because northern and southern Vietnamese is actually crazy. The words are not the same, pronunciation is not the same at all. Like R turned to Z, like that's more extreme.
You just need the time to understand all of them.
Do you think it's better to learn Vietnamese through formal classes or through immersion?
For me, I don't recommend people go to the actual class to learn Vietnamese because the language they teach you at the school is totally different from the language we use on the street.
It's not the best option, but it is also because you can go to the class with a local professor and you have a bench, you have the community around you, right? You are with another learners around you and you can share, you can track your progress, you can challenge yourself. So I think it's also a good point to go to the learning class.
It's different. So I got a lot of students who come here and told me that what I learned of school, people don't really say like that. If you want to speak like a native, you have to learn from the local people, the way they speak. If you go to an actual class, I think it's half for writing, for reading, learning grammar. But in Vietnamese, we don't really use grammar in speaking. Like the more you learn grammar, the more you not like a Vietnamese.
Take the book and just study hard the vocabulary. It's just useless. You should do what you love. I mean, that's the third language I learned now. So English, Spanish, and now Vietnamese. And you have to learn with what you love. Like it could be podcast. It could be, if you love football, just watch the football in the language you want to learn in Vietnamese. They love football, by the way. If you want to, through podcast, through reading, through film, like Netflix with a VPN, work very well. Just do what you love.
We don't really use grammar in speaking. We just say very broken grammar. Sometimes we just cut off the word and make it shorter and make people very confused, especially foreigners when they learn it. For example, like, hôm nay bạn thấy thế nào? How do you feel today? But Vietnamese just say, hôm nay sao? Nice out. So sometimes we just say very short, only local understand it. But if you want to speak like a native, you have to learn that language. It's not the proper language. And I realized, I read a lot of books about teaching Vietnamese. I think it's awkward.
Do you think it's a bit outdated?
Yeah.
The textbooks?
Yeah. Like they just use English language and translating to Vietnamese and ask people.
I actually have that with me.
To say that, but it's not Vietnamese.
Are you saying the textbooks, they have like a Western adaptation to relate more to the Westerners?
Yeah, I think mostly from English. Like people say like, how are you? Good morning. We never say that in Vietnamese. Like Vietnamese, we speak, let's say, very informal. We use the language in a friendly ways, not very formal like English.
Because when I was learning Vietnamese back home through the textbook, it's a bit outdated. I remember last year I made a TikTok video like ordering food from a vendor. I was like, in the textbook it says cho toi blah blah blah, but in my TikTok comments, a lot of Vietnamese people were correcting me. They said, you shouldn't say toi, you should say em.
As a Vietnamese, you better not say toi, But as a foreigner, it's accepted. For me, it's depend on your Vietnamese language.
Yeah, I believe it's accepted. I say a lot of toi and min.
If you're very beginner, toi and bạn is accepted. It's okay because personal pronouns in Vietnamese is very complicated. You have to know how old the people is. They are male or female. Yeah,
that's the second stage of learning. Like you're very beginner and then you realize that if you speak to the old woman and you say ban, it's actually you disrespect the person, but they laugh at you because they know you're a foreigner, obviously.
The relationship is very complicated. But if you want to speak like a native, you have to learn like em, anh, chị, those stuff.
So as I see from my students, from when you have lots of exposure, it's good for you when you have someone to talk.
It's actually so true. Just learn that le an, ti, em, go, ba. They make them smile. Like instead of saying xin chào, you just say like, they almost never say xin chào. They say just chào. So chào em, chào anh, chào cô, chào ba. It's make them smile. So that's cool.
Talk with, to communicate with, you can get motivated. It keeps you to keep going and studying Vietnamese. The class, actually, no one could take the class for so long, right? Even like maybe 3 years or 4 years is enough. You have to go to the street and talk to the local people. When you talk to the local people, you get complimented and like you are more motivated. You want to keep studying Vietnamese. If you...
So last time I was at the market and I tried to speak Vietnamese. That was like 4 months ago. I tried to speak Vietnamese to get the co tao, to have the chai kai, to have the fruits at the market. And I used the Vietnamese I knew, So, you know, I just listened Nuke now. So I was, okay, I think she asked where I come from. So tôi là người Pháp and stuff like that. And they were so happy that I speak a little bit Vietnamese, you know, that they give me fruits I didn't buy. Like, I just buy 1 kilo of apple, mật kỳ, quả táo, and they give me mango, they give me another fruits I don't even know, the dragon fruits, and I just went from the market with 2 bag of fruits, but I bought just one. They are very proud and they are very happy if you speak a little bit of the language, you know. That's unbelievable.
Just go to the class. Normally, I think the class is kind of formal language. If you have lessons with private tutors, they might like adjust the curriculum for you. They focus on daily conversations. But if you go to like the big schools, maybe you will have to study lots of things for the exams or like the very formal language. When after you learn it, but you don't use it and then you forget it, I think it's kind of waste of time.
So it's good to be consistent.
Yeah.
What is the best way to practice Vietnamese outside of the classroom?
I recommend people go to places where people don't really speak good English. You know?
Like where?
It's not district one. It could be other district like outskirts maybe or the countryside sometimes. I know that Vietnamese people, when they see a foreigner, they always think, are they gonna speak English? Especially young generation. So I think talking to older generation or who doesn't speak any English is gonna be better because otherwise they
And that's the extreme opposite as well. Like they expect of you speaking English, but if you say a little bit of Vietnamese, you know, like xin chào cô, cậu khỏe không, or something like that, they're gonna think you're fluent, man. So they're gonna speak to you so fast and stuff, and that's the opposite extreme.
just try to speak English.
Just practice what you learned in the class with the people outside the classroom. You don't need to be perfect to speak a language. For example, if you in the class you already learn how to order the food, so when you go to a restaurant, just order the food by the context. Your pronunciation at first might not be really good, but by the context, the waitress or waiter can get what you mean. When you order something and they can understand you, you might feel really good about it.
What's one Vietnamese phrase every Vietnamese learner should know?
Tôi muốn nói tiếng Việt. I want to speak Vietnamese. To let people know that they want to practice Vietnamese. Because otherwise, people keep speaking English to them. Even foreigners telling people that they can't speak Vietnamese and they want to practice Vietnamese is a good thing. Otherwise, people just keep speaking English to them.
I would assume Vietnamese people would be more than happy to speak with them in Vietnamese as well.
It depends, like I said, people who doesn't speak English, they like speaking Vietnamese because they have no other options. Or old generation people, like very elderly people, they prefer to speak Vietnamese.
The phrase em ơi, we use em ơi a lot to call the waitress or waiter, but actually this is a cultural difference between Vietnam and American. As I know, in American, when you want to catch the waitress or waiter's attention, you just raise your hands like you hope the waitress or waiter can see you and come to you, right? But in Vietnam, we shout em ơi, em ơi. I have many students who have been living in Vietnam more than 10 years, but that is really hard for them to follow because em ơi, they feel like they are being rude to the waitress or waiter. But actually, you are not. It's just how we catch someone's attention here in Vietnam.
What is
Yeah, true. I was when Anna say to me, just say chị ơi, em ơi. I was like, nah, I don't want to call the, it's like you're in English or you're in France or in the States or whatever, and you're like, hey guys, hey man, come here. Nah, we don't do it like just you're going to him or you're just with the eyes contact or raise your hand, Yeah.
so MI literally translates to?
Em ơi, em, you call someone to who is younger than you, like younger sister or younger brother, and ơi is like, hey. If you translate it into English, you might think, oh, hey, you. It sounds so rude, right? But that's how it is in Vietnam.
What are some top?
So basically, when you're going out of the tourist area in the big city like Da Nang, Hanoi, and Ho Chi Minh, people don't really speak English here in Vietnam, but you don't have problems if you stay in the city. I
Tips.
think most of the foreigners just, stay in the city. I mean, most of expats stay always in the city, and a lot of foreigners just travel the country, but they do like the very touristic things. So Vietnamese speak English in that case, like Hoi An, like Ha Long Bay, Hai Yang tour and stuff like that. But if you're going in the countryside very deep, no one's gonna speak English.
you would give a foreigner who wants to master the Vietnamese language?
Knowing a culture is a part of learning the language. You not only learn Vietnamese, you should study about Vietnamese culture, and that helps a lot. So the culture will tell how the language works. For example, I give you a very typical example. In Vietnam, we say trời mưa. Trời is a god in our culture, right? We don't say it rain like English. Because in Vietnamese, we believe in trời is the person who actually in charge of the nature, who decide that it's rain or not, or it's windy or sunny. So that is a part of the culture. That's why Vietnamese we say trời ơi. In Tagalog say my God. Like studying about culture and knowing more about culture will help a foreigner master that Vietnamese. It's not only about learning a language.
May I ask, trời mưa, does that mean?
And the culture is so interesting. The history is super rich. Like one of the richest country in terms of history I know is Vietnam. That's so interesting. Like even if you like philosophy and stuff, that's Eastern philosophy and with Confucius and that's so interesting.
Rain god?
God rain.
Consistency, practice, and be confident. I think a good thing about foreigners when they learn Vietnamese, they are really friendly. So even you guys just say like hi and sorry in Vietnamese, we still really appreciate it a lot. We might
that was the first word I said a lot at the beginning, like xin lỗi, xin lỗi, xin lỗi is very easy, like xin chào, xin lỗi, like sorry, or to get the attention. At the beginning I used this one, but yeah, that's very useful.
You speak really good like a native speaker. And that if you don't practice anything with Vietnamese, you will not remember the things you studied in the classroom.
Any other advice you like to share about learning Vietnamese?
My first advice is don't think Vietnamese is a difficult language. I think most people started learning and they gave up because they think it's very difficult. We still have a lot of foreigners who are actually fluent in Vietnamese, and you actually can do this.
Yeah, that's actually true. So many people I know live here don't want to learn because they say, oh, it's gonna take so much time. But actually, nah.
I think
it's like effortlessly. Instead of scrolling TikTok or YouTube, if you feel like you're just doing nothing, just watch some Vietnamese words and try to use 5 of them, and it's gonna be automatic.
Better find a good environment to practice, a good teacher, and focus on pronunciation. Don't care about grammar. But in Vietnamese, we don't really use grammar in speaking, so it doesn't matter about that. Yeah, like I said, culture is the part of learning a language. Knowing more about culture will help you to learn the language fast. It will explain to you a lot how the local people use the language. For example, like when you mix Vietnamese, the very first question they will ask you, how old are you? I know in your culture it's not really a good question, but in Vietnamese it's a must. Because if you don't know how old the person you're talking with, you don't know how to address them in the way you call them like anh chị or em. So it's explain why. Like Vietnamese, we are not rude. Like you think that's a very bad question, but we are not impolite. But that's the culture. So the culture will explain how the language works. My advice, besides language, culture is a part of learning language.
I think studying Vietnamese is a good experience for you. When you study the language, you understand more about the culture. Most of my students, they like to study Vietnamese because they share with me that they understand more about Vietnam, especially Vietnamese culture. For example, in Vietnam, when we give the tip for somebody, we might say like, here is the coffee money for you. That phrase is interesting for many students because they say that, Vietnam is such a country for coffee. So even when we give the tip, we also say that kind of question. In English, you say like, let's hang out sometime. In Vietnamese, we don't usually say, let's hang out sometime. We might say like, let's have coffee sometime instead. We are really like a coffee country. When we greet somebody, my students, when they speak English to me, they can say like, how are you every day to me. But if I say, how are you to Vietnamese every day, they might look at me and they are like, do I look sick? Because you asked me like, how are you? So maybe I look so sick. In Vietnamese, we say, did you eat yet? As a way of greet our friends. And it's a lovely way to greet somebody.
From my understanding, coffee money, does that also mean like bribing someone as well?
Yeah, you're right. When we get caught from the police.
So there is a place I used to go to work every day, and when I every day came and just say hello to everyone individually, they look at me super weird, like Vietnamese. I was like, there is a problem, something, but they just don't do that. It's just hello everyone, but it's not like, you know, I don't know, in France we used to go to everyone and kiss, or, you know, just
At least we also can use that sentence like, oh, here is the coffee money, just get it, just take it. Or if the police officer is a woman, because, you know, normally the woman, we don't drink lots of coffee, so we might say, oh, here is the water money, tiền nước, instead.
That's interesting that Vietnamese women, most of them don't really drink coffee, because I've seen a lot of those Vietnamese street coffees and they're mostly filled with Vietnamese men. Uncles smoking cigarettes, chatting with each other.
Yeah, you're right. I think the Vietnamese women, we usually like to have like milk tea. Instead, we even have some streets. The name of it is like the milk tea street, you know.
or just matcha, what they drink actually.
Phan Xích Long in Phú Nhuận, it used to be like the milk tea street, but I see like my friends when they are dating with someone, and when my friends they are mad about something, their boyfriend bring them the milk tea, and then suddenly they are happy again.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you so much for doing this. Chào mọi người.
All right, thank you very much, Sky Tran and the teacher in this video. So I noted 4.5 points for learning Vietnamese, you know, advices. I don't know about you, but it's like going out with no English people around. Doing what you like to learn. This is my personal advice, that I just doing what you like to learn. Don't take a book and study the book hard and chapters after chapters, because the book is made itself like this, you know. Just learn through the resources that you like the most. And point 3, speaking to locals. Try at least to speak at locals at the maximum amount you can, like every day if it's possible. And point number 4, it's be consistent, not only motivation, but like be consistent, try to practice every day. And 5 points mentioned by Hoi or something like that. The teacher, the guy teacher, say it's not that difficult that you think. It's not really difficult to learn Vietnamese. Just have this consistency and keep going with that. Please go visit the Skytran YouTube channel. It's very interesting. And that's it. I wish you a good learning of Vietnamese, or whatever the language you learn right now. It could be English, I don't know. And have a good time here in Vietnam, or if you visit Vietnam soon, have a great time. And I see you soon in the next video. Xin tạm biệt các bạn.